Hi knitters, welcome to PJ Knits. My name is Penny. I live in Central Illinois and I am a knitter, a blogger, and a YouTube podcaster. Thanks for stopping by. I live in Central Illinois and this is my knitting journal about knitting, my knitting, some knitting things. And I'm so glad you stopped by. We are now at 100 subscribers and thank you everyone for joining in. I do appreciate it. I just saw that notice today and what fun. Who would have thought? So, as I said, I live in Central Illinois and today is Tuesday in January 2022. And here it is sunny and 43 degrees, but going to get cold in the next couple of days. So it's sweater weather, people. Bring out those sweaters. I recorded this about 20 minutes into it when my iPad died. So I'm starting all over on my laptop, and we'll see how this equates to uploading to YouTube down the road. So thank you again for joining us. Today's episode, I am going to start a series discussing knitting organization. And I am not an expert, let's put it that way. But I'm just going to share some things that I do for my knitting, and a lot of it's just for fun. It's just what I enjoy doing. So I'm just going to share with some ideas with you, and you can use them if you want or don't, or say what the heck. What was she thinking? Because I am sure that down the road, 40 or 50 years from now, when my kids have to go through all of my stuff, they're going to be saying, what was mom thinking? And perhaps they will get just a glimmer into, if they don't already know, how much knitting meant to me, and how much fun it was and how much I enjoyed it. So I'm sure they already know that, but they really will get a feel for it. And again, they will wonder about her, I'm sure. So anyway, let's just kind of get started. The first part in this series is about knitting journals, and I'm just going to share my knitting journals with you, and how they have evolved over time. Many years ago, before Ravelry, I actually, instead of putting them into a journal or a notebook, I actually put them in the 3-ring binder, into the plastic pages into a project page. And there was a special project page set up for each project. And I wasn't knitting as much back then. So the ball band would go in there, and maybe my swatch would go in there as well. And I would keep those all in a 3-ring binder. I don't know that I may still have a binder somewhere, but I think pretty much I got rid of those when we moved to the new house. But so anyway, that's how I kind of started out doing knitting journals, or keeping track of what I was knitting on. So then several years later came by, and I started putting them into what I'm calling knitting journals. I will say that I used to be the purchasing director for a medical college. And before I got the director's job, I worked in that department, and I had, in conjunction with the purchasing director at the time. And we were responsible for all of the purchasing of the college. So there, one of those was office supplies, and it was a big deal, and still is a big deal at the college level for office supplies, because people had their preferences with calendars and pens and paper, and so we were in charge of purchasing all of that for them. And so we had vendors that was back in the day when they could actually give you things. And so they would give us samples of pens and notebooks and office supplies. And I love that. I love going to the office supply vendor show fairs, because you were getting lots of things, Post-it notes here and colors and it was so much fun. So really my love of office supplies, I think, can start back there in 26 years ago. Let's put it that, 27 now. So it became a thing for me then, and I still enjoy a good office supply. I love a good notebook, and scoping them out, and so I'm using them in my knitting office supplies is uh, in there. So that's just a little background of where this obsession, let's call it, came from with office supplies. But anyway, after I left the 3-ring binder stage, I thought I started using notebooks. And so I pulled them ones out that I have. And the earliest one that I could find is a Vera Bradley one. This was from 2011. And then the next one was still a Vera Bradley one. This one started in 2013. And they would encompass multiple years as well. And then the next one was a knitter's journal that I got from Schoolhouse Press. And this one started in 2016. And then finally, the final one, this one, I think I got it at Walmart. And this particular one started in 2020. And they would encompass multiple years. So they would have many things put into them. But really, I started out and continued up until mostly last year. They kind of had the same format. When they started out, they were strictly my project pages. And I would keep track of everything that I knit. I would put the ball band in there along with the scrap of yarn, the date that was started. And so that was basically the only thing that really was going into my knitting journal when I started out. And since then, I've encompassed some other ideas of how I want my journal to be. And they would go multiple years. And I'm going to talk about what I'm doing this year. But also what I would do is if I had a project that was what I'm considering a WIP, at the end of the year, it got a paper clip into it so that I could readily remember and keep myself reminded of a project that was still a WIP. So it would get a paper clip in it so I could find them easily when I wanted to maybe work on a WIP. So those were kind of the encompassing in my journal. The other thing that I would do in my journal at the end of each of the years, I would designate a page for what I completed in the year before starting the next year. So at the end of 2021, I did a recap page and made a tally because I really wanted to keep tabs on what I had done during the year. I wanted to see if I, just how many projects I completed during the year. Because these project pages encompassed multiple, because the journal encompassed multiple years, I would choose a erasable highlighter or a highlighter pen. And I would, as I finished a project, I would draw a square around it in that color that was designated for the year so that I could readily go through my journal and pick out, and tally each one. So in the case of 2021, it was turquoise. And as I finished a project, you can see here, I would put a square around the dates that it was knit in so that it would correlate to the year. And I could easily find it in my journal. Yes, I could go back to Ravelry as well and choose the date. And we'll talk about that in another episode. But, again, sitting there one night just wanting to see what I knit. And so I'd make a tally from my notebook. So every year had a colorway, and it would get a little square around it when we finished. Early on, in my very first one, I did not do that. Isn't that funny? It was into the second one where I would go and put the color around it. So that's interesting. It wasn't until not even 2013 that I did it. It must have been later, 2015 when I finally started using the color coordinating marker or pen. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I continue to do that and I'm still doing that. But maybe in 2022, I won't have to do that as much because I'm thinking of a different process that I want to use for my knitting journals. So, to talk about that, what I decided at the end of 2021 into 2022 is that what I really wanted to do is change up my way of journaling my knitting, and to use the journal as more as well as my project pages, but also my thoughts of things that I would like to knit, or just brainstorming some knitting ideas into my journal, and to use one much like a diary for the entire year. So what I did is I decided to do 2022 all by itself. So that's why I may not need the color coordinating for each finished project if I do the things that I want to do in my knitting journal for 2022. So you all are getting to hear exactly what my plan is. So I have a journal designated just for 2022. And first up, I like these dot journals, and the only reason I really like the dot journals is I don't know why I do, because it gives me an idea. If we can get a good picture in here, sorry, of the dots. It gives me a kind of line to keep even writing. Not that it helps, but anyway, I left a page in the book at the very beginning just for I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm getting into some stickers and things like that, and that's the other thing I want to do is I want to add some stickers, some fun things to my journal, much like people do in planning or in their planners. I want to dice it up a bit and make it look pretty and more as I go through. So I'm waiting on some stickers to come in, and I'll show you those in later episodes when they come. So I left the front pages open, just deciding I'm not sure what I want to put in there yet. Maybe something fun about this is 2022, or maybe something that I thought about in the beginning of 2022, and maybe the second page to kind of a recap of 2022, where my knitting went, you know, pluses and minuses. So the next page that I did, I chose a turquoise friction pen that's erasable in case I want to change anything in here. And I added some things that I want to do for 2022, some goals, suggestions, intentions of my knitting, just as to a focus. For me, I need a focus sometimes to rein back and not go off, you know, in a squirrel moment all the time, but just kind of get a feeling for what I want to do in 2022. Now, I'm not going to hold myself, you know, wrapped up in this. I'm not going to, you know, be guilty at the end of the year if I don't do this, you know, if I don't. But this is just kind of a focus or an intention, a way to go, a pathway for me for 2022 and what I'd like to do for my knitting. So I'm going to share those with you. First up is whips. I have a lot of whips, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. I do a hashtag 3 knit whips, and my hope is to either fish or cut bait on 3 whips a month. Now, again, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm not worried about it if I don't, but that is kind of my intention to do that. Secondly, I want to knit from gift yarn. I have some wonderful friends who have gifted me with yarn, and I want to knit that gift yarn this year. I want to try to do that quite often, and because there's so many fun things, fun colors, fun yarns to experiment with, and I'm looking forward to that. So I want to do that. My third one is to knit from my personal yarn shop. You all call it your stashes. I've talked about the fact that I have a lot of cool stash yarns, and I want to knit from that. I want to look at that as much as possible to knit on whenever possible. Again, that doesn't mean I can't go out and buy yarn. That's not a big deal if I do for a particular project, but I really would like to do um, to knit on my personal yarn shop yarns. Next up, sweater designers. There are a couple of sweater designers that I want to delve into in 2022. Um, this was on my 2021 list, but I really want to concentrate on these in addition to the other things that may crop up or the other knits that I want to do. First of all is Elizabeth Zimmerman and the EPS system. Last year I started working through Knitting Workshop, and I've not gotten as far along as I'd like to there. So I would like to continue that as well for 2022 and work with her EPS, Elizabeth Percentage System. I have the concepts down. I have a couple of sweaters that I am knitting on that I want to use this system. I've attended Meg Swanson's knitting camp for many years, and I want to use those techniques that I've learned in knitting camp and that are available through Elizabeth Zimmerman and Meg Swanson's paid books. And so I really want to explore and push myself into those as well. The second one is Coco Knits. I have her book, and I would like to kind of see her design aesthetic and the way she writes her patterns and try them out as well. And lastly, which is not really lastly because there will be others, is Anka Strick. She does a method of contiguous sleeve method, and I want to try that. I have a couple of those patterns in my library, and I would like to try them out and see what that's all about, and maybe incorporate those into future knitting things that I'm doing. And lastly, on my list is to finish what I start. What I would like at the end of 2022 in my journal is to have no paper clips for 2022, to say that I finished everything that I started or have cut bait on it. So that is in my page as ever reminder of what I would like to be doing in 2022. Intentions, goals, resolutions, whatever you want to call it. Next up, I have designated a page like for 2022 finished objects so that I have a tally up front. And so far I've finished a wrap, and I have a number 1 there so I can keep tabs as I go of what I have finished in 2022. The next 4 pages in my notebook, I have made a list of all of my WIPs and notebooks, where they're coming from. I went through each of my notebooks, made a notation of where the WIP was at, the date that I started, and the name of it. And what I'm going to go back and do now is I'm going to go back to my journal, and I'm going to list where these can be located underneath them, so that when I get ready to tackle a new WIP, I know precisely where to go for this. And so I have made some notes there. And again, when I finish them, I will do a red check and the date that it was finished, so I can get an idea of that. And if I decided that they're cut bait, they'll get a line through it and it will say cut bait. So that is next in my journal. I love this journal that I got, and I had that in my last couple of year ones. I liked it because it has these little ribbon markers in here, and so this ribbon marker is holding the place for January. What I did next in my journal is I made a page for each month of the year. And I did this really to keep a couple of things. To keep in my mind if there were particular functions, camps, retreats, birthdays, Christmas, new babies being born. And so I could keep my eye on projects that I may have a deadline that I want to finish, so that I have them all ready and in sight. So I can kind of, as I did when I worked for the college, is, you know, we had a timeline or a to-do list, and there were certain things that need to be done right away, and then there were certain projects that you had 2 weeks. And so, you know, it kind of kept on this timeline tasks that had to be checked off, you know, in order to meet the demands of those who were requesting these projects or due dates. So Next up, on these dates, on these months, I just made a rough list of things that I wanted to accomplish. For every month of the year, I have Sunday squares because of what I am doing in my mitered square blanket is every Sunday for 52 Sundays. I have challenged myself. I did it in 2021. I'm challenged myself for 2022 to continue to do a square in the blanket. And when I do that, I post to Instagram the hashtag PJ Knits Scrappy, and I post that week's square with a little piece of my Snoopy collection. And so what I'm doing in 2022 is keeping tabs on the month. When I finish a square, I put here, like number one had a pewter Snoopy. So I know which piece out of my collection I have photographed. Now, I know that there's labels you could put on people like me, but I'm keeping track of these because I want to I want to make sure I don't duplicate. So I put those into my book. On the month, I've done hashtag 3 knit whips. I have chosen a couple ahead of time that I want to accomplish for that particular month. And then I've also then made a list of projects that I would like to accomplish for that particular month, knitting. And I'll show you these as well, give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So I've got on this particular one, it says ground pepper. It says it's a Fiber U project, which means I want to knit on that when I'm down at the Fiber Universe, so that I am knitting on a project that I bought yarn there from. The arrow that I have put here means that this is not going to be accomplished in the month that it's here, but could go on for multiple months. My Comfort Fade Cardi, also, I see that as a long-term project. It is not going to be something that's going to be finished in the month, and I'm okay with that. And then I've got a couple other weekend sweater. I'm not sure. That's one of the Elizabeth Zimmerman ones that I'm doing, Meg Swanson. I'm not sure if that one's going to get finished in the month. I'm going to try, but again, if it goes into the next month, then it will have an arrow. And then I've made a little list for gift yarn on Trend Top, and then the Chelsea cowl and what yarn I would like to, I'm knitting that out of, and what I would like to, when I'd like to accomplish. Again, if it doesn't get accomplished in the January, it gets brought over to February. And so it goes on and on like that. There are some that are events. In March, I have a particular item. It's the Boo Boo Bunny that I want to do for my grandson, and I want to have it done for Easter. I want to put it in his Easter basket, and Easter's on 4/17. So I made a little note that that's when it's got to be done, and I should start that project in March in order to have it done in time for Easter. And so I have done that. And there's a knitting camp one that I need to start. Several of those that if I want to have them to wear to knitting camp, that I need to start them in a particular month in order to have them done. And then as I make my way through the rest of the season, I will add some of there when it comes time for Summer of Shawls. Knit got one already put into my June that I'd like to start on that, because I want to knit it then, because it's in summery weight or summery color yarns. So I put those into my knitting journal, and as we get close to fall, I have put the botanic shawl in September, because it is fall type colors. And so I've put that into September. Like, this may be something you want to think about knitting then, Penny. So made notes for myself. And then as we get into October, I have a whip, which is the Nice Capade sweater, which is one from Corey from the Minnesota 52 book that has the snowflakes. And if I want to be wearing that at Christmas time, I better get it done in October. So it's in my October list, along with the start of some Christmas knitting gifts there as well in October and November. And by December, I hope to have all my Christmas knitting done, so it is not there. Right now, there's nothing there, but that can change. Advent will come about then, and so I will put that into the appropriate month as we work there. So that's just a little idea of the start of my journal. Now, the real important piece that I started this way back when is to keep track of my project knitting. And all of my projects that I knit on have a project page in my book. And when I start it, I start a project page for it. It then kind of lays dormant for a while, because what I do is I use a paper pattern. And I've tried iPad, I've tried my phone. My eyes aren't that great for my phone, so I use a paper pattern, and as I'm knitting, I make notes on that pattern. Once I am finished with the project, then I take those notes and I put them into my project page to encompass the mods and some other information that I might want to know down the road. And then when I'm all done, I take pictures of the item on my body, hopefully, and then I upload the information and all of the notes to a project page on Ravelry. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, that's like duplicating the effort multiple times. It is. But I enjoy doing this. I enjoy putting them into Ravelry as a place for others to be able to access mods that I've done. I enjoy and I love it when people take pictures of a sweater on their body, because that gives us so much information about the sweater and whether it's something I want to knit, or if I want to make mods to it, if I want to lengthen the sleeve or lengthen the body. If it's crop, and I think I can do that, and I like seeing that off of other people who take pictures on their bodies. So I do appreciate those who do that. So that's kind of my process. It is knit from the paper pattern with notes and mods on it. It goes into my project page, and then I upload it to a project page on Ravelry. So what do I put in my notebook? First of all, I always put the start date. I put a finish date. I make the information as to what I'm knitting, the name of it, and the designer if possible. I put the size needles that I'm using and what type. In this case, I'm doing Chelsea's Cowl. I'm using a size 4 interchangeable Chiagu needle, and what particular bag I've started putting that in. This is in my ZK Superpower bag. I do that so a couple of things. If I'm looking for a project and I can't locate it, at least I know what project bag it's in. And it's because it's in my journal. Also, if I'm knitting along and I have a moment where I want to cast on something else, it's like, where are the size 4 interchangeable needles? Well, I can go to my journal page and I can see that this is on Chelsea's Cowl. And so if I want to pull those away from there, I know where to go and get them. Same thing goes if I go to the project bag and it doesn't have the tips on it, and I've not written down on my paper pattern, but hopefully I have. I can go to my project page and I say, that's what size needs to go back on that project so I can continue the whip. So I put that on my project page to start with. On the right hand side of the corner, I put who this is for, and then I put a next remark, where did you get the yarn? Was it a gift yarn? Was it a vendor you bought it from? Did you buy it at Stitches Midwest? What vendor? In case I need to go back to that vendor and get some more yarn, or in a colorway, or look at that. Next up, I always put a ball band in there that shows the yarn and also the colorway, along with the washing instructions for future thoughts, and then any other information that I want to put on the project page. So Here is one that I have started. I don't have the ball band. I have the ball band, but I don't have the clips of yarn yet, but I will. So you can get an idea of what those look like. And here is one from an old journal. Because I like to have all that information right there. If I'm knitting at night, I can go right to it, get a little feel for it. So that's kind of what a project page looks like. I will then, like I said, any kind of information that I put into it, changes, mods at all, I will put in there. And I also, if I had a picture of inspiration, I would put that in there. This is one from last year that I did. Because sometimes what I will see is something in ready to wear, and I'm thinking, ooh, I want to take that and equate those colorways, equate that look into a sweater or a style. And so I was doing this last year. I just started doing that last year, really. I had not done it in prior years, but I started to do that last year when I was thinking, I have a binder that has inspiration pictures in it. I'm like, yeah, but wouldn't it be nice to have as part of your journal the inspiration picture in there as well? And maybe the other one I did last year was Storm Mountain, and this is the picture that started the whole thing. The sweater, I loved everything about that. And then I put in here a page of and talked about my inspiration, and I want to do that more in 2022 in my journal. More of a journal / diary of my knitting and where my headspace or where my thought process was going. In this particular one, I said Storm Mountain. My inspiration was a Pinterest outfit from 2014. Blue jeans, red top and tote, black shoes, bracelet, down over shawl, which I previously had in my finished knits. And so I searched Ravelry for cardigans I liked, and I found Storm Mountain that was very close to the style. I searched my stash using Ravelry for the weight and then the color. I did not have anything. I then happened upon Sunday Knits yarn at camp and found just what I was looking for on a color card that I had gotten from her. What I did with swatching, how I generally swatch, and what I learned about swatching. And we'll talk about that. That's something I want to talk about in future episodes, and I will come back to that. So anyway, those are some things that I want to encompass and continue in this particular journal for 2022. I also do, and I did not do it as much as I should have, but talked about it in last year's journal. I want to make sure that I put the swatching information, and I've done that in the new journal and here for my Comfort Fade cardie that I'm working on. I put in depth notes in here about what I swatched on, what particular yarn, the color of that, the yarns that I had planned on using, what yarn I chose out of there. In this particular one, I said I swatched on Vanilla Bean, and I then swatched on a size 5 needle, and I broke it down. What it in my journal, how many stitches I measured, what the measurement was before blocking and after blocking, because with that gives me some information for deducing, I guess, of what should happen if I go down so many needle sizes. And again, that's something that we will talk about in later episodes, because I feel the need to share that with you. Hopefully that's something that you might be interested in. So we're going to talk about swatching and my process, but that's one of the things that goes into my journal as well now, so that I have that information for not only this project, but maybe for future projects that I want to use the same yarn. So that's all a part of this, my journal project pages of information that I want to keep in the journal. So those are some things that are keyed into my project page. And as I said, there is at least one, maybe it could be 2, 3, 4 pages that go per project, depending on the information. So the other thing that I want to talk about that I am putting into my journal for 2022 is sometimes I see inspiration photos. We talked about that, but they can be of items that I might want to knock off from ready to wear. But sometimes you see a picture in a magazine or an Instagram or a catalog, and you're like, I like the colors in that. And wouldn't those colors be great in a garment or in a shawl? Not necessarily knocking off the what you're seeing, but the colors that have been put together. And so I've started putting those into my journal for 2022. Again, 5 years from now, I can say, this is what we thought 5 years ago was a good color combination. And so I pulled this one from off of a Talbot's. I love this. And if you, let me get close, but you see that light blue, the dark blue, and then there's a shade of coral peachy in there. And I think those colors would look good together. So I took that picture and I want to put that into, for no particular reason, just color thought. I also found this one from the Jamiesons of Shetland off of Instagram. And I love these colors, their inspiration photo. Whether this goes into a sweater, I'm not sure, but very much I could see this. I have some of these colors in a half shawl, whether I use Jamieson's or I use Spindrift, but I wanted to put these pictures in my journal along with the colors that they are. So those are in my journal just as some inspiration photos, not of anything in particular, just things that I wanted to keep and I wanted to keep close. And then lastly, I have set up a inspiration photo, but this is also going to be a wrap that I want to start for spring. And so I've created a page for it. I wanted the inspiration photo there. And I believe this is going to be suburban wrap. And you can see I started using some stickers that I had from an old calendar. So that is an intention of not definitely using those particular yarns, but I have some colorways that I kind of want to go through that. And this green is what I would not have normally put with it. And all of a sudden I saw that as potential for a yarn that I have along with an onyx color that I have. And the key to it is I have an aqua blue purse, kind of this color that I thought this screams, you've got to knit this to go with that purse. So taking my accessories with my shawl to be knit. So I've got a plan going there so far. So that's kind of my knitting journal for 2022 and some journals that I've got for past ones that I wanted to share with you. Now, last but not least, staying on that whole knitting journal or journal type thing, if you're still with me, I do appreciate you hanging out with me talking about my journals. And I'm hoping that that the start of this, you get a little, there's some information here you might want to use. And if not, that's fine too. But I just wanted to share a couple of other things because in keeping with the knitting related notebook, I just wanted to share some other notebooks that I have with you. One that I didn't bring here, but I have what I call, it's called a reporter's notebook. It's a skinny spiral notebook. And that I keep next to my chair when I'm watching YouTube channels, and specifically about knitting. And I have them handy so that I can, when somebody is podcasting about something, I write a little note down what podcast I'm watching and what the idea was, or the yarn, or something that I want to investigate. I don't want to stop and do it right then, but I want to do it later. So I have this reporter's notebook that I keep tabs on things like that, and it's handy for phone calls if people call. So some things that I wanted to just share with you that are fun, that I think are fun for me. I have another, it's another book from Vera Bradley that I started some time ago. The things that are in this particular journal is for knitting retreat related items, or places that I would love to go. In this particular notebook, I have ideas that I've found from other people who have attended maybe these retreats or functions, and I want to remember those, you know, should I ever get to go. And so I have a couple of pages for Rhinebeck notes, you know, things to take, places to go, what to do. I have a page from a lady that I followed on Instagram and on Ravelry, and she doesn't post it as much, but she has some great information on traveling, of how she packs stuff to be able to travel. And she specifically was going to Scotland, Ireland, I believe, and, you know, taking for a long time and taking a small, not a small bag, but one bag, you know, and how she kind of packed for that. And I'd see her in wellies, and I'm like, how did you, those wellies? And so she gave information of what she did, stuffing socks and things down the wellies, you know, to make them not just the boots in there, but other things. So I made notes of kind of her tips and tricks for planning something like that. There's a note on Shetland, should I ever get to go there, as well. Stitches Midwest, we do attend that, and there's a page for things to make sure that I don't forget, you know, like my hot pot for tea at night, things that I might, you know, my extra water bottles, you know, things that I might want to change up from year to year, comfortable shoes, most definitely. Edinburgh Yarn Festival, if that ever happens, notes of things to do. Also Maryland Sheep and Wool, places to go, what to expect if it rains, you know, tailgate, if you're driving, tailgate, make sure you have your food in your trunk and go out there and spend some time. Boots, you know, as shoes because it may rain. And so it goes on and on and on as things go, you know. And then started doing some just places to go. Should I ever, you know, get to go traveling again, knitting adventures with my roomie, places that we might want to go. So I've got a notebook just for that, so it doesn't really encompass everything. I know exactly what's in that. Next up is a book that I received from Allison some time ago, and I call this the Listen Attentively to the World, Write Your Own Life. And what I started putting in it is some things about Norway, because it's another place I would love to go, but also Christmas traditions for Scandinavian countries, you know, just things about Christmas and December and things that I want to remember, fun things that I would like to do to make the holidays fun. And maybe there's blessings and just traditions and things like that. So I started a notebook just for that, and things that, you know, that make me happy, or, you know, side hustles of things that I might want to do. But mostly I'm using it for knitting traditions right now. So that's a fun book. And I readily know what's in that book. So when I go to find it in my drawer, I know exactly what to pull out. Last but not least is the knitting journal that I bought from Briar Rose. And in this particular one, I am doing tips and tricks. A lot of times you will see tips on a YouTube channel or on Instagram, and I want to remember those, but it's like, where do I put them? And so they're going into my knitting journal. I've got them in here that I've started putting there. I've also started a little couple of pages of things that I saw that I might want to just, I don't know if there's a pattern out there that I might just want to write up a little, you know, a little pattern, you know, for my own use as to how I want to do that. So I've got a couple of pages in there, but mostly this is for tips and tricks that I glean from other people. And then also downstairs, I don't have with me, is I have another of the Schoolhouse Press knitting journals that is strictly from camp, and that every time we get a little pad of paper at knitting camp, and so you write notes in there, things you've seen that people were wearing, and so I will write those notes on that pad, and then I'm putting them into my knitting camp journal once I get back, to keep all of those things all together that is part of knitting camp. So those are the knitting journals. Those are the things that I do to kind of keep myself on task with knitting journals, and a diary of things that I are keeping track of. So again, there, like I said in the beginning, I'm sure that there is a word or label that you could put on somebody like me, but I do enjoy it. It gives me a lot of fun. So anyway, a couple of things I just want to share with you before we're all done today, to go into our finish up mail call or drop off call, or whatever you want to call it. I have a couple of things I want to share from you. My new mug from my friend Brenda, Mugs. I'm loving this. She knows that I like big cups, and I'm a fan of Snoopy. So this was a wonderful gift. Thank you, Brenda. Want to share that. And my daughter-in-law and son gave me a late Christmas present, dropped it off last week, from Yarny Finds. Some stitch markers, and I'm using a couple of these, so I can't show you them, but they're Harry Potter. And I'm liking these bulbs. Let's do this so you can see it. The envelope and the sorting hat. And I love these. I am using them. So that is from Yarny Finds. And I got those from my kids. And then that's it for that. I just want to share a sweater with you. This particular one, I want to give you the info on it. This one is the Featherweight Cardigan. This is by Hannah Fettick. I bought the yarn from 3 Irish Girls in 2017 at Stitches Midwest. It is a skein. It is a strand of their yarn, Springvale sock, and their Miera mohair. And in their booth, they had a booth, 3 Irish Girls, at Stitches Midwest, and it was all done in peaches. And they had this turquoise combination. It's a skein of each. And so I purchased it back then, and I think I came home that winter and knit on it. And I love this. I had it out, haven't worn it this year, but I wanted to share this one with you. This is originally from Knit Bot Essentials by Hannah Fettick. And if you recognize this, this is the Featherweight. And so you can see they did it, it's a fingering weight. They did it all out of single yarn. But you can buy this book. They did it out of Quince & Co. Here you go. There's another page. Oops, sorry. Here you go. And so I just thought that was fun, pulling that particular one out. I wanted to share one that's still available. And this is Featherweight. And again, this is just another take off of that particular one. You can do anything. And then the pattern that is in here, as you can see, that treatment around the neck is a stockinette that rolled. And I'm fairly certain the original pattern that I saw in the booth did the rib. And so that's what I did, a 1x1 rib as well. And I made it, it was 3/4 sleeves too. I would have liked to have had a longer sleeve with it, but I ran out of yarn. I only bought one skein at the time. So this is Featherweight and still available. A nice, wonderful sweater that you can make mods for. And I'll just stand up a sec so you can see an idea of how long it is. There you go. Here's my waist, so I made it a little longer. And I have to say that I like it more now than I did originally. And the reason was because I was a little bit heavier back then. And so now I think it fits really well. And so I really, really do like it. So that's Featherweight. I wanted to share that with you because last week there was a lot of out of print ones. So anyway, okay, that's all I have for you today. Again, we have 100 subscribers. Thank you, everyone who have put out the word about my little knitting podcast. I do appreciate it. I appreciate you coming back, tuning in, friends. And I hope uh, things that I inspire you to maybe journal a little bit, keep tabs on your knitting, make some plans, intentions, but don't beat yourself up about it. Knitting has to be fun, right? So thank you again. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. And I will catch you on the Pearl side. And until the next time, which I'm not sure what we'll be talking about, sweaters or maybe some sweaters. We'll see. I have more in the series if um, if you enjoyed this one. So again, do a thumbs up, do a like, tell your friends. Until next time, knit on with confidence and hope through all crises. Love you all. Thank you. Thank you. Bye for now.